9th City Council meeting and public forum. Hoping people can find their seats so that we can begin. This is October 9th, and it is the first full year that we have an opportunity to recognize Indigenous Peoples Day. And so we are honoring Indigenous Peoples Day in our ceremonial time this evening. And so I'm just going to remind folks that the City Council passed a resolution last year, and the relevant, I won't read the whole thing, but one section says, now therefore be it resolved by the City Council of the City of Eugene, a municipal corporation of the state of Oregon, Section 3, the City of Eugene shall utilize the second Monday in October as an opportunity to reflect upon the ongoing struggles of Indigenous people of this land, to celebrate the thriving cultures and values of the Indigenous peoples of our region, and to stand in solidarity with Indigenous peoples elsewhere. And we have today a guest, Mitchell Lyra, who is a member of the Warm Springs tribe, and who is a student at the University of Oregon, and he is going to join us and address the audience for a few minutes. Mitchell, please step forward and you can come to the mic.
Either one?
Yeah.
Either one.
Either one.
So I'm going to introduce myself in my native language. That's just how I was raised, and it'd be disrespectful not to. And so, Ignash Winiksha Mitchell, Washinash, Warm Springs Connect, Washinash School Shla, School Pumapa, Ulikanpa. My name is Mitchell Lyra. I'm a member of Confederate Tribes in Warm Springs, and I'm a student at the University of Oregon. And I'd just like to thank Mayor for inviting me here. I am a junior at the University of Oregon, political science major, American studies minor, legal studies minor. And I just had a few remarks about the day, this day we're celebrating. I thank the council for passing that law to be able to, so we can honor this day, not Columbus. It's a big change. It's a small step in the right direction. It's not enough though. It's not enough to, I think, to my standards, other people's standards. But I think today we celebrate the people who first called this land home. Like, you guys occupy Kalapuya land, so your Starbucks, your Walmarts, all these things. This court is built on Kalapuya land. So I think in the same way that we talk about when military people die for our country, the same way for you guys to live the way you want to live, people died for that, and those were Native people. They died for this courthouse to be here, for these Starbucks, for all these things. In the same sense, that's how we should think of it. That's how it should be thought of in the same regard. And so, where I come from, we say a prayer for those who struggled and endured, the things that Columbus brought. And so, a lot we don't talk about it, but Native women suffer violence at the highest rate in this country. So they suffer at 2.5 times the rate of the national average. So 1 in 3 Native women will be raped in their lifetime or sexually assaulted in their lifetime. And so Columbus brought these things. And so if you read his journals, he talks about the ways that when he interacted with Native people, the things he did to Native women and Native people. And so we don't talk about it. We don't put these in our history books, that he took Native women and sold them in European markets, had them as slaves, gave them to his men on his ships. We don't talk about these things. So those are things, an idea of Columbus Day that really hits home for me, because I only have women in my life. I only have sisters that played an integral part in my life. And so our societies are different where I'm from, in Warm Springs and in Indian country, in a lot of ways. Men are not usually the man of the house. It's not the dynamic where I come from. And so it's a bit different. And so historically, Indigenous women were raped by settlers and soldiers. Such attacks were not random or individual. These were always tools of conquest and colonization. The attitudes towards Indigenous peoples that underpin and such human rights abuses continues to be present in the USA today. They contribute to the present high rates of sexual assault perpetrated against Indigenous women and help shield their attackers from justice. We're not only implicitly condoning and celebrating shocking sexual violence sanctioned from the sanctioned racism that took place hundreds of years ago, but actively perpetrates it today. It'd be one thing if we could look back in a similar fashion in the way we analyze and explore atrocities like the Holocaust and the African slave trade and say, wow, that was sickening, and very certainly we made mistakes, but we made some societal strides. But sadly, the sexual subjugation of Native people still feels so close to home. So that's what I want you guys to think about when you think about Columbus Day, this day that, you know, we celebrate nationally, is that, you know, this is really feeling predominantly, like, when Native women are sexually assaulted, 86% of the time it's by white men. Like, that's there's no getting away from that. And so there's a lot of legal structures and things that are just embedded in the law that allows these things to happen to Native women. And so when you guys are thinking, when we talk about Columbus Day, think of that. Think of that. That could be your sister or your daughter. Like, you know, think of it in that terms, like it's your family. Like, that's how it is for our people. Like, it's affecting us at a crazy rate, and it shouldn't be that way. And so that's what I think when I think of this day and this man and what he brought, not only to North America, but other people. Think of it in that way too. He wasn't, you know, he has his fingerprints all over the world. That's all I really have in regards to this day. And so, thank you guys.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Yeah, that's fine. Thank you very much. I appreciate that, and appreciate that we have some work to do as a society in owning our history, that it is dark in many ways, and that we have some work to do to understand it better and to be more accurate and clear. And so I look forward to working with you, Mitchell, and others as we talk about that. I also want to take this opportunity just to make some comments regarding the shootings in Las Vegas. As we awoke to the news of that horrible shooting in Las Vegas, it was again a time for our country, our communities, and our families to steel ourselves against the loss, against the terror, against the unreasonableness of this action. We must honor those lives that were lost as who they were: friends, family members, brothers, sisters, sons, daughters, mothers, and fathers. That is the loss we must understand with each new act of terror or mass shooting. Now is a time for mourning and to grieve. While we hold the victims and their families close to our hearts, we should be also emboldened to push harder for the changes we need to make in our society. We move forward with the recognition that the instances of mass shootings have become too frequent and real in our country. We must recognize the facts regarding gun safety laws, that when they are enacted, gun violence decreases and mass shootings decrease. This is a fact, not an opinion. As we move forward to create livable and safe communities, we must understand that mental illness is a disease and must be treated as health care, as a basic human right. I will support legislation at the state and federal levels on securing increased funding and assistance for mental health services in Eugene, and add my voice to that of a rising number of mayors who are saying enough to the impacts of lax gun laws that do not keep our communities safe. And now, we are ready for a public forum. So, the public forum is, thank you, an opportunity for individuals to speak to the City Council on any city-related issues except for those items which have already been heard by a hearings official or are on tonight's agenda as a public hearing. Each person will have 3 minutes to speak. When you come to the podium, please give your name, city of residence, and for Eugene residents, your ward if known. The timer and lights indicate the time you have to speak. The red light indicates the end of 3 minutes. And it has been very politely pointed out to me that I haven't been telling people how many people we have signed up. So it looks like we have 15 today. And first up is Rent?
Oh, Russ, David.
Oh, David. Oh, gotcha. Oh, boy. Sorry, the name. That's a good start. David Monk. and followed by John Thiele.
I've been writing like that for many years. My apologies. So I'm David Monk. I'm here to speak to you on behalf of the Southeast Neighbors Board of Directors. And I got most of the work session that y'all had on the rest stop topic. So thank you. I really understand your apprehension. I think doing your due diligence and doing this more extensive outreach makes a lot of sense. We could have done better, for sure. I hope that when you think about outreach, you'll think about how you all walked door to door and canvassed. I think that's the kind of outreach that you really need to do to get a sense of where people are on this issue, inviting a rest stop into their neighborhood. I have to tell you that myself personally, and I know many of the other board members were reluctant at first. The first meeting did not go well, and the second was just spectacular in the level of professionalism that was brought by the Nightingale Steering Committee, meeting Nathan and Tracy, and clearly they're, to me, and I think to the other Southeast Neighborhood Board members, they all demonstrate their ability to manage this facility successfully. And you know from staff report, Good Samaritan is supportive of this. I don't know if you heard that one of the neighbors that came to the meeting that had responded to the flyer lives immediately adjacent. She was supportive of it growing to a rest stop. And of course, the recommendation that the board made was that it happen gradually, that it go to 12 members, have a pause, and to determine whether the neighborhood was still supportive of seeing it grow larger. So I think what you're doing makes a lot of sense. I hope the outreach is effective and that you get input from a lot of folks. What I would say to you that when I did the flyering, the neighbors I met, when I first spoke to them, everybody had reservations about seeing it grow to a 20-person rest stop. After a fairly brief conversation, everybody was supportive of this process that we're recommending, more gradual. So I think if your outreach is successful, I think most people will be willing to give it a try. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. John Thiele, followed by Trish Kandak.
Okay, I'm John Thiele. I live in Ward 1, and I support Emily Semple's position that you really should move forward with this NHS rest stop approval as soon as possible. I would like to address the City Council with some of the out-of-box ideas being discussed in my role as co-chair of the Lane County chapter of the Pacific Green Party to either prevent or undo homelessness without always relying on government programs that are often underfunded. First is the idea that prospective tenants who don't meet the traditional income or credit test for getting a room or apartment could hook themselves up with willing investors who could use their good income and good credit to co-sign or even sublease apartments and rooms, possibly in exchange for a small monthly fee to make it worth it for the investor. This would be a good fit for an investor who is in the market for setting up a for-profit group home for the absolutely destitute, but who doesn't have the capital required nor the stomach for the state paperwork that is required. This is assuming that it won't adversely affect the prospects of people on Section 8 waiting list who are not allowed to have co-signers or roommates when accepting Section 8. I actually had an experience related to this in San Jose. I was living in a living room of someone's apartment for 4 to 5 years, and it worked out just fine, paying $400 a month total rent. Second would be to have people volunteer to host couchsurfing opportunities on the website called couchsurfing.com or similar hospitality travel sites, and specifically state that they are open to hosting anyone who needs a place to crash for a few days. So far, there is one host in the Houston area who is offering his place for hurricane victims, for instance. Currently, there are 4,000 hosts listed on the Eugene portion of the couchsurfing.com, but only about 10 of these have logged in within the past 3 months. So some recruiting could be done to encourage more people to sign up. Finally, I propose that a $100 per parcel per year Lane County tax levy of the same size as a recently renewed jail levy can be put on the ballot to provide rental assistance and property tax relief to all who would need it, at least for those in immediate crisis. In my view, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Thank you.
Thank you. Trish Kandak, followed by Kevin Burns.
Hey, I'm Trish Kandak. I've lived on Monroe Park for 13 years. This is in Emily's ward. My house has the misfortune of being located directly across from the picnic tables in the northwest corner of the park, which for the past few months has been plagued by a large group hanging out all afternoon and into the evening. When I say large, we're talking anywhere from 8 to 35, 40, 50 people hanging out, smoking, drinking, shouting, an excessive amount of cursing, blasting gangster rap, using our alleyway as an open-air bathroom. I've seen them neglect and abuse their dogs, and there's frequently a baby strapped into a stroller nearby. The noise level increases as the night goes on until fights erupt and police respond, or don't. In the morning, we find globs of toilet paper, poop, needles, and trash strewn about not only in the park, but also in our front yards and alleyways. These are not homeless people. They're not down on their luck. These are young, able-bodied, aggressive, foul-mouthed thugs with no respect for anything or anyone, including each other. When I call the non-emergency line, my concerns are often dismissed. For example, on the night of our biggest fight involving, say, 30 to 35 people, I'd called in several times as the situation was escalating throughout the evening. When a violent brawl finally erupted, police dispatch wouldn't send officers because I wasn't able to say what weapons the group was using. A neighbor later told me that he'd observed this fight break out, and the original weapon used was a skateboard that a woman used to slam a guy in the head, and immediately fights broke out all around the park. When the police do show up, it's with sirens blaring so that the crowd immediately disperses, only to return once police leave. It's frustrating, discouraging, and disheartening to have to deal with this situation on an ongoing basis. I'm angry that I may need to leave my home in order to live in a safe, clean, quiet place. Some neighbors have already moved, and many others report avoiding the park because it feels so unsafe. The Monroe Park neighborhood is great. I love the location, the homes, the trees, even the park itself, and most importantly, I love my neighbors. I don't want to move, but I can't handle another season of this. It's my understanding that the funds earmarked for police coverage downtown were supposed to cover Monroe Park. Occasionally a squad car will drive past, but I haven't seen the more effective bike or foot patrols that we've had in years past. Eugene has a smoking ban in effect for our parks, which could easily be used as a tool to discourage these troublemakers from hanging out all day. Though I have noticed in many cases they just cross the street to smoke in front of our houses, which isn't really a huge improvement for neighbors. But generally, any real and regular police presence would be a deterrent to this element. Other ideas to address this situation include closing the park at dark, or at a minimum 9 to 10 p.m., and not allowing overnight parking along the park. And of course, enforcing these regulations. Thanks for listening.
Thank you. Next is Kevin Burns, followed by Mel Height.
Good evening. My name is Kevin Burns. I live in Eugene in Emily's ward. I'm also here to talk about Monroe Park. I feel a little bit conflicted in that for several years I've been an advocate that the city needs to have adequate housing and adequate space for people to be. They're not going anywhere. You know what the problem is. It was just described, but you've also been dealing with it yourselves downtown and in the park blocks. I wish these people could have a place where they could be in a safe and patrolled manner. So I'm going to resist trying to say I want them out of Monroe Park. I think if you enforce the laws, drug use, drinking, smoking, littering, dogs off leash, that might be the result. if you can't abide this behavior downtown, I want to ask you how you can abide it in a neighborhood. The incident that happened in the park blocks earlier this year when the police tried to make an arrest and a fight broke out, I wasn't there, but I would be willing to bet that the 2 fights that we've had in the last few Friday evenings made that pale in comparison. If those fights had happened downtown, this would have been front page news and on the news, but instead just a few of us witness it. And every day we have to watch this crowd get bigger and bigger and bigger and wonder what it's going to erupt into. We will hear arguments and foul language on a regular basis, but we've had 2 brawls break out, as Trish explained. We had a meeting with the police and with Emily and neighbors a couple of weekends ago, and Pete Kearns was there. He essentially said that there was very little that the police could do about it. They don't do preventative policing because they're always on call for the next emergency. He also said that their strategy was to assess the problem this year if we took care of the park blocks and Kesey Square. I think you've done a nice job with that, but you were well aware that they weren't just going to leave Eugene. They were going to go someplace else. And I also think you knew where they were going to go. They were going to go to our downtown neighborhood blocks. Pete Kearns said that this year was an assessment, and next year they would put some implementation in. My hope is that we can work on this throughout the fall and winter and be ready next year. We're going to have a downtime, and I'd like to be ready next year for this. And I'd also like to find out about those funds. Thank you.
Thank you. Mel Height, followed by Julie Lambert.
Hello. Okay, we already know why the City and Downtown Business Association have collaborated on this dog ban. I'd like to bring your attention to a few things. I see how selective officers are when choosing who to move on or ticket for having a dog downtown. I've never seen someone who appears housed get stopped or ticketed. In fact, I see dogs who appear to be with housed owners sitting on the picnic benches at restaurants, sometimes even with their paws on the table. As cute as this is, I'm offended at the imbalance. The majority of incidents where dogs are barking at each other is a dog with a housed-looking owner barking at a dog with an unhoused-looking owner. It appears this is doggy racism based on the class of person holding the leash. Let me tell you why this ban is ineffective and a waste of time and money. The ADA recognizes post-traumatic stress disorder as a disability serviceable by an animal. PTSD is an anxiety disorder that can occur after an individual has experienced a traumatic event, particularly those that include the threat of death or injury. Injury and death is what the homeless go through on a daily basis. This info comes from National Alliance to End Homelessness. The actual event of becoming homeless can lead to trauma through the loss of stable shelter, family connections, and accustomed social roles and routines. The uncertainty of where to find food and safe shelter and a place to sleep erode a person's coping skills. This reality is more the absence of physical shelter. It is a stress-filled, dehumanizing, dangerous circumstance. At least 50% of homeless adults report experiencing significant trauma, rape, combat, needing to fight off attackers, assault, witnessing a person severely injured or killed, or know someone who has, accident or sudden injury, etc. Not speaking statistically, my own experience with homelessness on the streets of Eugene, I witnessed people I care for attacked, needing to guard and carry around belongings, consistent threats from officers to ticket or arrest people if they don't move on. The injuries due to being forced to move on all the time takes a huge toll on the body. We would be completely surprised at how many people actually get hit by cars either walking or on bikes. Most are too afraid of how the police or hospital will treat them, so they try to survive with the injuries until they can make it to Occupy Medical. I was attacked by a man. It was my dog who saved me. My dog is the one who jumped in and made him take his hands off me. She also kept me warm and loved me unconditionally. You know why the unhoused won't give up their dogs, so the only conclusion that can be made, the city is trying to yet another tactic to get rid of people, and this is not really about the dogs. Stop trying to make Eugene more beautiful and start taking care of its people. Get rid of the dog ban. It is an easy and cost-saving step in taking care of people.
Thank you. Julie Lambert, followed by Sabra Marcroft.
There, good evening. Thank you all for being here. I appreciate it. I know it takes time to come here. My name is Julie Lambert. I represent Ward number 9. I have a hard time with public speaking, but I have an even harder time with knowing, had I spoken up, someone might have heard me. And maybe, just maybe, in my own small way, I might have made a difference. I currently reside in the Twilight Zone, and where I'm housed but not housed. I have temporary housing. It could go away at any time, and it's very uncomfortable. While I am extremely grateful, believe me, I am very grateful, I don't forget my comrades who are still being criminalized for everyday behaviors like sleep, shelter, eating, playing, praying, bathing. If the council reviews the facts, they will know that Housing First offers a solution. I know that you have. I know that you have looked at this, and I'd like to see it moved forward, because it is more economical to house folks than to arrest them or ticket them or hospitalize them for everyday activities. Utah, Colorado, and Canada have already proven this. This isn't, this isn't something we're making up. It's actually happening. I would love to challenge the council or your governing bodies. I've always wanted to say this, and I've never done it, okay? So I'm going to do it now, okay? Give me a catastrophic incident, okay? Followed by the loss of all of your friends, all of your family, your housing, your vehicles, everything that you own, your clothing, everything, you name it. And the accident will probably appear to be your fault, okay? And then take away your phone and your keys, and somebody steals your identity. And those of us who have endured these consequences, and have had this happen, are still here. I just wonder if others who would have this happen to them, how would they fare? What would it be like for them? Thank you. I'm Julie Lambert with Ward 9.
Thank you. Sabra Marcroft, followed by Karen Whittington.
Good evening. I'm Sabra Marcroft. I reside in Eugene over on 18th. And first off, I wanted to say thank you to Councillor Evans for bringing up in the work session the necessity to develop a process around establishing new rest stops. And a suggestion that I had would be to make the public comment that you're intending to have for this next one, to make that a regular part of the process for each time that a new rest stop is moved along in the process. That said, I'd like to go a little bit farther and talk about the potential future that we face. San Diego right now is dealing with the effects of a hepatitis A outbreak, and it's an epidemic, and 14 people have died and over 60 people have become ill. Some of the people who have died have been homeless and some have not. This morning they opened a over 120 person emergency camp. And it's going to be open until December, when they think they will have the infrastructure to do a more established tent camp for the winter. This is for the purpose of providing a safe place for people to sleep with sanitation and access to medical care. And I'm aware that we've, here in Eugene, been very progressive, and we have the Dusk to Dawn program, which is going to be expanded. What I'm going to suggest is that we make plans to have the ability to instantly create a similar emergency camp to what's been done in San Diego, so that when there is an outbreak of a disease that's spread through feces because we don't have adequate public restrooms, that we'll be able to meet that need. And I'd like to further suggest that a much more cost-effective measure might be to make sure that people have adequate access to sanitary facilities in which to defecate. That is more complicated than it sounds, and I'm well aware of that. And thank you very much for listening to what I have to say. Thank you very much for being careful and considerate in your process of developing rest stops.
Thank you. Karen Whittington, followed by Joe Tyndall.
Hi, my name is Karen Whittington. I live at 1166 Oak Street on the north side of First Christian Church. I am a gypsy, and I've been traveling pretty near all my life from coast to coast. And I've noticed that once I got here from the brutal beginning, I have no choice but to visit hospitals constantly. And I have never felt so scared than I have in this state, because this is the only state that does not force the ERs to house the homeless. They come in, they get evaluated, they find out the level of their intelligence, and then they're put in the right order. If the people cannot take care of themselves permanently, they are in a building where the students are getting hands-on experience in how to handle people like this. The other layers or levels of intelligence are boosted in areas where you can educate yourself. You get a building, then you're monitored. If you're caught out of the on curfew, going after drugs and that, you start getting penalized. But there's no homelessness out in these other cities, in these other states. And I was in Arkansas. Even when I had an attack, the ER room, as poor as that state is, they still housed and helped the homeless. And I don't understand how come people forgot this, because it was a few decades back when the socializing the medicine in this country, the doctors fought and made it legal, with the government agreeing to let them gouge prices as long as they kept their promise from keeping the streets from the homeless from hurting others. And that's what I wanted to announce is, please check your records and find out and why your doctors are pocketing it instead of contributing to the community, because 9 out of 10, they're failed doctors that are making the drugs that are making addictions. And these are facts. And like I says, I've traveled from New York to Florida, from Virginia, all the way over to Texas, Colorado, Wisconsin, Minnesota. Whenever I get an attack from a child abuse scar, I see and I learn. I record good things, and this is an asset that I think that should be opened up a little deeper to give safety to everyone who is participating in the societies. If you're doing good, fine. Here's your level of intelligence. The doctors have the qualifications to do this. They do it all over. Why in Oregon don't let that happen? I don't know. I've been here a little over a year, and I lost everything because I got discriminated against, because I've got a perfect rental and I'm in the streets because of the doctors letting these hurt everybody else on renting, are the ones that can't do their adding. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next is Joe Tyndall, followed by Ian McTighe.
Hi, Joe Tyndall. As a former police commissioner and regular observer, I believe they overstated their progress and plan. Many nice words, but little actual work that justifies the expense for officers attending meetings. In fact, the brief council discussion tonight was far higher quality than most commission meetings. Now that Bob Walker is gone, maybe the commission will finally consider Chief Kern's top 2 priorities, homelessness and growing political violence. There is an uncivil war brewing. The issue is free speech, that First Amendment nonsense that makes science, prosperity, and civil society possible. For most of my life, the right sought to limit expression. Today, the left wants to criminalize every idea they don't like and to punish the speaker. I see the problem as people claiming to fight hate by being hateful and people claiming to fight fascism by being fascists. The lack of self-awareness is staggering. I was present at Berkeley for Free Speech Week, or at least the 30 minutes of it that occurred. I felt far safer among the folks labeled as violent, hateful, racist, sexist, white supremacist, Nazi, Trump supporters than I did while among Antifa and other leftists gathered to shout down and physically intimidate. There were many arrests. The hundreds of police were not given a stand-down order this time. Sadly, EPD's civil disturbance policy is grossly inadequate to handle a gathering like this. The Berkeley administration consistently fought to kill this event. The final knife was threatening the students sponsoring the conference with expulsion. There are emails establishing this. 3 weeks ago, the Brookings Institute previewed its comprehensive survey of universities, finding roughly half of college students believe ideas they dislike should not be taught, speakers they dislike should be banned, and students have a right to chant or otherwise make it impossible for audiences to hear hateful speakers. The survey also found 1 in 5 students advocates violence to silence distasteful ideas. Education is in serious trouble. Believe it or not, the Heterodox Academy ratings, the University of Oregon scores far worse than Berkeley for its support of free speech. There is already violence on the U of O campus where students who dare to challenge the social justice narrative are being roughed up by small mobs. The police commission could look into this, but they won't. The commission could study homelessness, but they haven't and they won't. And don't hold your breath waiting for advice from them. Thank you.
Thank you. Ian McTighe, followed by Wayne Martin.
Hi, my name is Ian McTighe. I live in Ward 1. That's Emily Semple's ward. I'm also very proud to work with Ward 9 Homeless Neighbors Association. I'd like to talk about this downtown dog exclusion zone. We haven't actually got word on it if y'all will be voting to continue it or if it's going to sunset. But either way, I'd really like to see this end and maybe speak to this issue and why this has been a problem. You know, I actually live really close to Monroe Park. I'm very familiar with the problems that occur there. But I want to point out that what's happening is this dog exclusion zone has actually been pushing people out very quickly. And these are not your, you know, stereotype as druggies or kids out in the street. These are people who are often buskers, the heart and soul of our culture in the city. Frankly, these are people who actually do work a lot of times. You know, many of them are employed and simply don't have anywhere they can afford to live. Those are the folks out there with dogs right now who are basically being chased out of downtown, and they're being chased into the park along with some of these troublemaking kids, and it's getting more and more crowded out in these areas where people are still able to be. So of course there are going to be fights, and of course there's going to be serious problems, because that's what happens when you increasingly put pressure on a large amount of, you know, often very traumatized and very desperate people and force them to live in circumstances that are just frankly bizarre in what we call the first world. This dog exclusion zone has been almost uniquely, from everything I've seen and everyone I've been talking to and the research we've done, almost uniquely enforced amongst those who look very poor, in other words, homeless, raggedy clothing, maybe hasn't had a shower in a while. And that's a form of discrimination. It really has no place in this city. It's the opposite of progressive, if that word means anything anymore. And, you know, I just find it really disturbing. And, you know, this dog exclusion zone ends. At this point, a lot of the damage is done. A lot of longtime folks out in the street who take care of the kids when all of the charities and all the state's departments fail. they're gone. You've got, increasing amount of anarchy and not the happy-go-lucky kind the college kids like to talk about. So this has, really been disturbing to me. And I feel like even if this dog exclusion zone is allowed to sunset, which it definitely should, because it's not reducing dogs, it's just reducing poor people downtown, which is an immoral goal. It's not a way to solve the kind of problems and conflicts that happen on the street. But I'm also worried that this is only the first step in a number of strange and random laws that happen because of a single incident usually, which disproportionately affect the very poor in our community. I'd like to live in a city better than that, and I'd like to live in a society better than that, because it's not a problem confined to our city, but it is something we should be leading the way in overcoming and not making international press, as we did when the dog ban was first announced in The Guardian. That's an internationally read newspaper that noted that this law was seen to be discriminating against the homeless. That's really, really embarrassing. So, thank you.
Thank you. Next is Wayne Martin, followed by Heather Saluki.
Good evening, and thank you for all your hard work and your long hours. As of Labor Day, Janet and I live at 931 Taylor Street, which again is in Ward 1. It has been nearly 6 months since the council voted to begin a ban on dogs in the downtown area of Eugene. Perhaps you are collecting data now on how effective you feel the dog ban has been, or perhaps hasn't. I'd like to make a simple and very heartfelt recommendation. I'm urging you to try the other side of your experiment. Please, please consider trying a 6-month trial where dogs are again allowed in the downtown area. Now, it may be difficult for some of us to imagine how much some people truly need their pet companions. It is especially true of the unhoused community. Many have had recurring trauma in their lives from childhood. Alcoholic parents, divorcing parents, family violence, harassment and abuse as children, limited or no medical or dental care, substance abuse, lack of help with mental and emotional pressures, job loss, absentee and insufficient role modeling, trouble in school, assault and attack, victimization, and not the least of which is extreme poverty. Issuing statutes which deprive the profoundly unfortunate and the traumatized the comfort and protection of their companions, who are sometimes the only family that they have, seems too great a hardship and too great a penalty. There's currently a group of housed and unhoused people who meet weekly to listen to each other and support each other in their shared concerns and difficulties. They've come to be called Ward 9, the ward with those who have no address. These are peaceable people. I'm one of them. And they are very sensitive to those who need their pet companions. They are committed to acting as agents of assistance where pets are not being companioned properly. So please, would you, please consider using the next 6 months to observe carefully some positive changes that the responsible members of the unhoused community can bring to the care and well-being of their pets, as well as to the downtown and its businesses and its patrons. Thank you. Thanks for listening.
Thank you. Heather Saluki, followed by Eugene Drix.
Hi, I'm Heather Saluki in Ward 2, and I'm here tonight to talk about the possible rest stop location at 34th and Hilliard. I live about a 10-minute walk from that site, and it was first really brought to my attention about 2 years ago when a group of us did a YIMBY town hall on homelessness. We'd separated the group into neighborhoods, and the Southeast Neighborhood Association was one group, and they identified that site. Now, it's taken about 2 years to get to this point where now we're recommending it formally to City Council, and it's exciting to get to this point. We've had to have a lot of firsts along the way. One of the things we did was we formed a group of neighbors from different associations to start really looking at the problem of homelessness in our community and trying to locate some sanctuary in our own backyard, so to speak. And we wanted to know, is there an outreach handbook we could use to get started? Well, there wasn't, but we helped write one along with some great support from city staff from Reagan Watch Us. And now I feel like we're here at another point where we don't really have that final process for how City Council decides to approve something. I heard your work session earlier, and it sounded like one of the processes that you didn't really specify, but you mentioned was going to the Register Guard and the TV news. And it's just one thing I kind of worry about is the spin it gets at the end. So I think we should have a really clear-cut process. And it has taken a lot of volunteer hours to get to where we are. And it's exciting to think that in 2 weeks you might say, okay, it's going to be a rest stop. But it would be even better if you said, and we're going to fund it with some of that $1 million shelter money that we've set aside, because it would give us that commitment towards rest stops that once a community gets to that point where they've identified the site, they've identified the provider, they've got community support all around it, now we're going to give you some money to make sure that you can really get off the ground and get started. So when you're making that decision for whether or not it's going to be a rest stop next week, I ask for you to just stretch a little farther and consider also giving it some funding. Thank you.
Thank you. Eugene Drix, followed by Tracy Jocelyn.
I'll stand. Hi, everybody. It's so great to be back here. My name is Drix, and I live in an attic above High Street. So I'm high above High Street. Well, that would be a third high, wouldn't it? Okay, I get confused. My topic today, I try not to relate to time because thanks to you all, this program is available to anybody in our whole community. It's on TV 24 hours a day. It's on the internet even more hours a day. And it's all possible because of you, because of our Metro media, because of our Comcast Survivor. None of this is what I plan to talk about, by the way. So let's just keep going. Everyone knows me now. I kind of think fast and I jump topics. My topic for tonight is you. I want to talk more about you. It's just easy to do. I think the concept that I'm proving to myself, and I can't go past it because it works every time, is that pretty much everybody is named you. Everybody you've met, everybody you're going to meet and have met. Public speaking is everyone's toughest thing to do, except for me, because I'm just here talking to myself. And I'm very comfortable with that. And I wish everyone else would be able to look at it that way too, because we are a community. That includes all of you guys. And I would like to say another topic. When we build our new city hall, can we have the microphone? I'm volunteering to help there, but just have it face everybody. There's a whole new concept. And I think, well, new is in Eugene, but I think that the world needs to change. We are being forced to be aware of, and I think that change can be on purpose if we do it right. Eugene has got more smart people with more hearts than I think any community, and we're all here because, well, we believe in us. We believe in us so much we named our country us. And right now we're getting a little scattered and moved around. Isn't that convenient? But it's just people trying to distract us, so that just distract you, using my new word, from what you really are and what you believe. So there. I know this is so much more polished when I'm at home talking to the mirror, but I think you see what I'm saying is just rethink the word you. And anybody you see on TV and in the radio and in person, you already know them. They're you, especially in public speaking. I don't think of me as being on TV now. I'm just, except for that camera, but yeah, but it's just being here with my friends, and that's how it should always be in any city, especially those big ones we have up north. That's not us. So with 10 seconds left, I didn't cover any topics, but I'm glad to be back, and I will continue to be back. Thank you.
Thank you.
I didn't end with a bang, did
Next is Tracy Jocelyn, and our last speaker will be Norma Greer.
On a more serious note, my name's Tracy Jocelyn. I live in Betty Taylor's ward, which is 3, right? 2. Happy Indigenous Day. Thank you for switching that up before this holiday hit. I'm glad Mitchell came by, and it is sad realities he was talking about, but on the computer, I've even made more aware of Indigenous people's plight, and I'm really glad that as a nation we're coming out of our heads, out of the sand, and maybe, start treating Indigenous people right as a rule. So I'm really glad it's not Columbus Day. NHS Rest Stop, I'm the co-manager. It's been almost 3 years. We've had rest stops, and now we're a car camp. I keep saying rest stops are easier because there's community to deal with each other. It's a little tricky to go to a grown man in his hut and say, hey, what are you doing to better your life today? But when we have a community, it's like, hey, what are we all doing? Anyway, that's kind of a joke. As far as how many huts are ready, there are 3 ready, and we have donors ready to step up and purchase them. There's a 4th one we may be able to get used, and we will continue on our end to keep planning for October 23rd to go faster and dial it all in, and 2 weeks isn't really that long. I agree with Emily saying this is kind of embarrassing because we have a homeless people problem, but I also have lived at camps around town, and neighborhoods really want to be informed. Like they loved us, but they were kind of mad at the city. So like Sabra and Greg Evans, we kind of need to dial it in and make a template. And I am available for consult because I do consider myself an expert at this point. If people step forward and say, we have a problem with this, then it's going to point out their philosophy more than NHS Rest Stop, because people in a rest stop really want to succeed, so they follow the rules, and we make rules that respect people's home ownership and home rental and neighborhoods and children. We increase safety by being in a neighborhood. And I'm here to tell you there's real live homeless people in South Eugene, and they kind of stand out because they got mental health issues, and we better dial this in, folks.
Thank you. And finally, our final speaker, Norma Greer.
Thank you. I'm Norma Greer. I'm in Betty Taylor's Ward 2. I'm here to speak in favor of establishing the rest stop at 34th and Hilliard. I live less than a 2-minute walk from what will be the rest stop there, and I'm very encouraged by the progress being made to make that rest stop a reality. I moved into this ward less than a year ago, although I've lived on the fringes of Eugene for many, many years, and I've worked in Eugene for many years. It was a bit of a shock to me to realize there were people living under the bridge at 30th and Amazon, that there were people needing access to restrooms that were using restaurant restrooms. I came to understand that my neighbors knew which vans had people living in them. The rest stop at 34th and Hilliard is a drop in the bucket, actually, but it's an important step forward that gives people a safe place to be and a lot of structure to improve their lives. And I'm very enthusiastic about having that rest stop in my neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you to all who commented. I want to enable councilors to make any comments on what they've heard tonight. I have Councillor Semple. Take it away.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you to everyone who came. I've been wanting to give this one hint out because it was a problem for me when I used to speak on your side. These microphones are really sensitive, and you can sit back here and be heard. And I was always talking like this, and then you get all this extra noise, and I can't really understand you. So talk back here, and you'll be much more effective. The dog ban is going to sunset. We did not start the process to keep it going. So as of November 1st, it will end. If it is somehow desired to be brought back, the whole process will start again with the public hearings. I appreciate very much hearing the comments on what the experiences have been for the dog ban, and I'm really, really looking forward to walking my dog downtown again. The shelter money is not available for anything but shelter. The first budget motion was for more generalized use, but council made that just for the shelter. However, there is some money already going towards NHS from the $25,000 that was in last year's budget for rest stops. So I just want to clarify that although that $1 million is glittering over here, it's not available. Really big concern for me in the last couple of weeks, month, is the situation at Monroe Park. I lived across from Monroe Park for 12 years long ago. I've watched it have small troubles and happy times. These aren't small troubles. This is affecting the whole neighborhood, and we really, really need some help. The bathroom situation is intolerable. The alleys are deserving of hazmat attention. Somehow there has to be a place for people to poop. The homeless situation and the troublemaking situation gets all mixed up. There are homeless people at Monroe Park that are really respectful. They take care of it and they protect it. But there's other people coming there who do not care about it. They do not care about the neighbors. They're not respectful. Staff, the police are so overworked that although I asked to get a couple officers there just for Friday night, there was no time to respond to that. So I want you to know that I'm doing everything I can to get some help out to Monroe Park, and you'll just have to trust me on that. I'm doing everything I can think of. I encourage people who want to come enjoy the park peacefully and respectfully to please come to Monroe Park. And that will help support it.
Thank you. Councillor Evans?
I want to thank you, Mayor. I want to echo Councillor Semple's comments on this, because this is just not a Monroe Park issue. We have issues all over the city in our parks that are in the same kinds of condition. And while we have focused a lot of energy and a lot of effort into making downtown a safer place to be, some of that has been pushed out to the adjoining neighborhoods. And it's not just Monroe Park, but we have heard about Whitaker for months and months and months now in terms of the issues that are affecting Whitaker. Well, they're not just affecting Whitaker anymore or Monroe Park. They're out in Bethel. They're out in other places in the city of Eugene where we are having eruptions of large numbers of people, some of them young people, some of them not so young, that are engaged in all kinds of illegal activity, and brawls are erupting and other things are going on that I haven't seen in the 33 years that I've lived here. We need to deal with this. Whether that means that we expand the Park Ambassador program that seems to have been effective in some troubled areas this past summer, or we create positions for more community service officers attached to the police department that are not sworn officers, but who have the ability to go in and work with affected neighborhoods and affected neighbors and really kind of separate those people who are troublemakers from those people who are not. Then I think that we can have a more effective way of making our communities a lot more safer. But as we stand right now, I know at least 2 incidents in my neighborhood, and I'm not going to specify the street it happened on, within the last 3 weeks, in which we had 60 or more people involved in various fights, and people hosting parties that had no business hosting parties with alcohol and other kinds of things going on. And so we clearly have some issues that we need to grapple with, and we need to get them taken care of now before they become chronic and epidemic. And we're all hearing this. It's just not Monroe Park. And I sympathize with Monroe Park because I used to live close to there, when I first came to town. But, we do need to do something about this.
Thank you both. Any other council comments? All right. Councillor Taylor.
Thank you. I just heard today about a situation on Pearl Street where people are picking up needles every morning and walking around feces. It is spreading the problem, and I agree that we need a task force or something, but everyone has to be somewhere. And I think that part of the problem is that we have pushed people out of downtown and they're somewhere else. But there are other problems too, and I don't know what to do about it, but I agree that it is urgent. Thank you.
Just a point, and Manager may respond. We do have a committee that's working on parks security, correct?
What there is there's a council committee that has spent some time thinking about, among other things, park security, funding for that, as well as more general parks maintenance. And I think you've met maybe 3 times and have
twice. We got one more meeting.
You have another meeting coming up. So you do. There is a council committee that's spent some time thinking about that. And what we would hope as a staff is taking that input as well as any other input that we have, and if there's a good proposal to bring back to the council around park security. We're very aware of that, as all of you are. As you know, as we've gone out and surveyed as part of the potential bond issue for parks, one of the chief concerns for people has been park security. And so the committee is a part of trying to come up with a good solution for that.
Thank you. Okay, I think with that we're finished completely with the public comment and response, and we are now ready to go on to the consent calendar.
Move approval of the items on the consent calendar.
Second.
I guess there's no discussion on this. So does anyone need to pull anything off the consent calendar? All right, all in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It passes, and we are complete. Thank you very much. And I believe that's the end of the meeting.